So today I'm looking at a video from Historia Civilis called Boudicca or Baudis. I think it's Boudicca. Yeah, I don't know how to read that, but point is, I've heard of this woman before. I think she was a Celt, if I could be wrong, Celtic, and she was a warrior queen who rebelled against the Roman Empire. So yeah, that's about the extent of that, what I've heard about her. I've never actually, went too deep into finding out anything about this woman, but that changes today because now I'm looking at this video from, like I said, Historia Civilis, and, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing more about this person and seeing what exploits she had against the Romans, so I think that'll be pretty cool. Now, if you want to watch this original video from Historia Civilis without my yapping here, the link to this video is down in the description down below. It's the first link you'll find. And if you want to help support my channel in any way, shape, or form, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe consider being a Patreon or YouTube member. Now, with that said, and now without any further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Let us watch Boudicca by Historia Civilis.
During the reign of the Emperor Nero, the Roman conquest of Britain was less than a generation old. With conquest came Romanization, which meant that Roman immigrants were now flooding onto the island.
Yeah, I've always kind of been interested in, Roman Britain. And, yeah, the natives that we covered were the Britons, I think. And at least that's how I think you said it. And we covered them when Julius Caesar and his exploits against them. They did decent against Caesar when they were using hit-and-run chariot attacks. Basically, more guerrilla-ish warfare is the only way they gained any kind of success against Caesar. But, as we know, I think it was during the time of Emperor Claudius that the Roman conquest of, Britain happened, and they managed to get all that. So yeah, I've always kind of been interested in, how this was as a province, and, how it was, kind of administered. I know that Hadrian built a wall between that and, what we know as modern-day Scotland. So there's that going on. Some of the Roman accounts of the native Britons are actually really, really mean. I remember there's a video about them, and basically the Romans, calling them disgusting, or, stuff like that. It was really mean. So, yeah, that's something I remember looking at.
The king of the Iceni, one of the independent tribes here, could see the writing on the wall, so when he died, his will designated 3 heirs, his 2 daughters, and the Roman emperor. This was supposed to be a subtle way to peacefully transition the Iceni people into the Roman Empire, while upholding the king's daughters at the head of the tribe. It didn't work. The Romans used this as justification to move against the Iceni. Soldiers.
That reminds me, there was a Ptolemy in Egypt that actually put in his will, or basically sold the Ptolemaic Empire to the Romans. I forget which Ptolemy. There's 12, and they all literally have the same name. But there was a Ptolemy that actually basically left Egypt to Rome, and I think that was later used as a pretext for the Roman domination of Egypt. So, that kind of just reminded me of that,
Went into their homes, confiscating anything of value. Many of the Iceni men were simply taken and sold into slavery, while the women were raped with impunity.
Oh my goodness.
Even the king's 2 daughters were raped. And when their mother, the king's widow, a woman named Boudicca, tried to intervene, she was stripped naked and whipped. After this incident, Boudicca called for a secret meeting with the Iceni leadership, and invited many neighboring tribes that had been subjected to similar treatment by the Romans. At this meeting, they agreed to all unite under one banner, and launch an open revolt against the Roman occupation. A vote was held, and Boudicca was elected war queen of the united tribes. That spring, we're told that the tribes didn't even bother to plant crops.
This may be the
All they did was make weapons, gather supplies, and secretly prepare for war. When summer rolled around, Paulinus, the governor of Britain, took a legion and marched off on campaign. Now, if you'll indulge me, I want to follow Paulinus' campaign.
Okay.
We'll come back to Boudicca, don't worry. Paulinus planned to invade the island of Anglesey in Wales, which the Romans called Mona Insula. This island was one of the most important religious sites in Britain, and conquering it would be a huge symbolic victory for the Romans. When they arrived offshore, the soldiers climbed down off their boats and started wading towards the beach. When they got closer, they could see that the beach was packed with druids. They were dressed in black, with their arms raised to the sky, chanting.
Oh, that's an off-putting sight. When I was a kid, I used to watch, like, wrestling, like, professional wrestling, and there's this wrestler called The Undertaker, who whole gimmick is that he's, like, a dead guy zombie, and he had, like, minions that were called druids, and they were known to wear, like, black robes. It's an old memory. He used to be my favorite wrestler, so I just kind of had that image in my head. But yeah, that's incredibly unnerving if I saw that, like, it, you know?
In their native tongue. Accompanying them was a mob of women, also dressed in black, armed with nothing but flaming sticks. The women started screaming like wild animals, and charged into the water while the druids continued chanting on the shore. The Roman soldiers were so petrified with what they saw that everybody stopped moving, lowered their weapons, and just stared. They couldn't even process what they were
To be fair, I don't know how you react to this. Like, I was expecting, like, yeah, like a defensive force all lined up ready to fight you. That's typical invasion stuff. This is, like, some satanic stuff. You're like, yo, what's the satanic black magic here? And, yeah, that's, ugh.
After a long moment, Paulinus started shouting insults at his men and ordered everyone to charge. That snapped them out of it. It was really no contest. The Romans cut their way through the women all the way to the beach, and when they reached the chanting druids, they cut them down as well. But they slowly realized that the druids weren't just standing on the beach, they were standing on a giant funeral pyre.
Oh.
One of the surviving women, still carrying her flaming stick, lit the pyre, and the entire beach went up in flames, consuming the bodies of the druids. It wasn't until this moment that the Romans realized that this wasn't a battle. This was a massive human sacrifice.
Oh! Oh my god. Holy crap. Oh. Yo, I'm telling you, what is this, like, weird ritual going on?
And they had just unwittingly participated in it. To a certain extent, the Romans believed in magic. Omens, witchcraft, oracles, sorcery, superstitions, all that stuff was fair game.
Yeah, as a Christian, I also believe in a lot of spiritual stuff. That is some demonic stuff right there. I'd get out of there. You're probably, there's probably some curse going on now. You know, actually, funny thing is, I actually had neighbors who were satanic. My grandma caught them, like, we have a front house in front of our house that we rent, and, like, before the current people who reside there, the previous family was, like, conducting weird witchcraft rituals, and, yeah, we had to kick them out, but, so, you know, I didn't personally see it, but, like, my grandma said she witnessed it. It was, yeah, it was a lot.
Also believed that foreign gods were just as real as their own. To them, what they had just done was going to have real-world consequences. What kind of consequences? They didn't know. Just after this incident on Mona Insula, there were reports of strange happenings back east. People said that the English Channel turned blood red. People said that they saw ruins of a destroyed civilization under the Thames River. People said that there were corpses washing up on beaches. People said that a statue to the Roman goddess of victory strangely collapsed.
Oh boy. Yeah, especially in a world ruled by superstition. I feel like nowadays most people are, like, not really that into, like, you know, stuff like this. They probably just chalk it up to those random events. You know, we live in a more secular, less superstitious world, I feel. But yeah, back then, you gotta think, stuff like this must have petrified everybody. You know what I mean? Yeah, this is quite the morale. This is the most unique way I've ever seen an army's morale start to falter.
For no reason. Were some of these omens invented by later historians? Maybe. We don't know. But if any of these rumors were swirling around at the time, the Romans would have been predisposed to believing them. This was the mood in the air when Boudicca finally launched her revolt. Boudicca's first target was the city of Camulodunum, which was one of the largest Roman settlements in Britain.
What is up, everybody?
Messengers from Camulodunum were sent to the cities of Londinium and Longthorpe, saying that a massive army was marching on the city, requesting aid. When Londinium got word of this, they sent 200 unarmed slaves to help restore order, basically a slap in the face.
Wow.
When the messenger arrived at Longthorpe, they actually took the threat seriously. They sent their entire detachment of 2,500 men to help, but neither force arrived in time. A small group of soldiers in Camulodunum made a heroic last stand protecting thousands of civilians hiding in a large temple, but after a siege lasting several days, the temple fell, and all of the inhabitants were slaughtered. The residents of Camulodunum were subjected to every horrific indignity you could imagine. Some were hanged, some were crucified, some were tortured to death, some were boiled alive, some were forced to watch as they were disemboweled. According to the Roman historian Dio, they hung up naked the noblest and most distinguished women, and then cut off their breasts and sewed them to their mouths in order to make the victims appear to be eating them. Afterwards, they impaled the women on sharp skewers, running lengthwise through the entire body.
Oh my god. Holy crap, that's like some Ed Gein crap right there. My goodness, dude.
The entire population of the city was subjected to stuff like this. No Roman was safe. By this time, Paulinus was starting to get reports that there had been a revolt. He got his men together and set off back east as fast as he could. Longthorpe's 2,500-man relief force was expecting to just march right in there and put down some local uprising. It never even occurred to them that they were dealing with the complete mobilization of the entire Iceni people, plus their allies. They were met by Boudicca's forces outside the city. 2,000 were killed and the remaining 500 fled. As Paulinus was en route, he heard of this defeat. All Paulinus had with him was one legion, only 5,000 men. He sent out messengers to every little town along the way, calling up every retired soldier still able to hold a sword and shield. He was able to bring his numbers up to 10,000 this way.
Wow.
There was still another legion, another 5,000 men, stationed in a stronghold to the southwest. Paulinus sent a message to them ordering them to come to his aid, but the guy in charge of the legion at this time, their primus pilus, just flat out refused his orders. So Paulinus was stuck with only 10.
Dang, how strong is the host of the enemy though? Like 10,000.
1,000 men, and arrived at the city of Londinium just as Boudicca was closing in. He told the locals that he didn't have enough men to effectively mount a defense, and advised them to evacuate the city. He offered the legions protection to anybody who wanted to come with them, and with that he marched north, followed by thousands of refugees. When Boudicca reached Londinium, she subjected the remaining population to the same treatment that Camulodunum had got. They tortured, mutilated, and killed anyone they could find, and then they burned the city to the ground. Boudicca then took off north, in pursuit of Paulinus' legion. Paulinus was headed towards the last surviving large city in Roman Britain, Verulamium. When Paulinus arrived at Verulamium, he advised the inhabitants to evacuate the city, and said that he would protect anybody who came with his legion, just like before. Then he continued north, followed by even more refugees. When Boudicca's forces descended on Verulamium, she had it destroyed in exactly the same manner as the other two cities. At this point, the three largest Roman cities in Britain were simply gone. 80,000
Oh my goodness, holy crap. Yo, yeah, Boudicca, how did I pronounce her? Boudicca before? Yeah, I'm really bad with pronunciation, guys. I don't know why. It's like my curse in this channel. But, Boudicca. So, dang, she is on one. Yeah, I mean, violence begets violence. As we covered in the beginning, the Romans definitely weren't the nicest people. That's an understatement, but you know what I mean. And, yeah, like, yeah, she's not really, like, being that benevolent either. So, yeah. My goodness, though, this rampage is insane. And the Romans can't seem to, like, actually match up to this overwhelming army. At least at the moment, so they're just trying to get everyone out of the way. Like, this is a really big problem. I wonder how the Romans actually, like, deal with it.
Romans had been massacred, which was a huge percentage of the total Roman population of the province. The entire colonization effort was now in jeopardy. Paulinus continued marching north, but now he was nearing the edge of Roman territory. There wasn't really anywhere left for him to go. He had thousands of refugees with him, very little food, and no hope of receiving reinforcements anytime soon. Paulinus decided to turn and fight. He sent the refugees ahead and told them to keep walking west until they hit a new settlement near Wales, but he must have known that before long Boudicca would come for them too. According to Dio, Paulinus speaks to his men. It would be better for us to fall fighting bravely than to be captured and impaled, to look upon our own entrails cut from our bodies, to be spitted on red-hot skewers, to perish by being melted in boiling water. Britain will be a noble monument for us.
Honestly, yeah, at this point he has no choice but to fight. He can't just keep running around. So, essentially now just... Well, let's just die in battle rather than be tortured. Fair. I think I would rather just die in battle too, to be honest.
Dio liked to invent grandiose speeches, but you get the point. Paulinus didn't think he'd live to see tomorrow. Paulinus found an area with a forest on both sides that would work as a choke point. That's where he chose to fight. Boudicca's army showed up, and it had grown in size. Our best source from this period claims that this was the largest army that Rome had ever faced, and there's some evidence to support this. In Boudicca's army, the women may have outnumbered the men, and most of them were now outfitted with captured Roman weapons. The Iceni liked to use chariots, but Boudicca didn't have very many, presumably because most of their horses had been taken by the Romans. Boudicca's massive horde of infantry loosely formed up, and she had her supply wagons brought in and put in a semicircle behind her line. Some people think that this was for non-combatants to watch the battle, but that's kind of a trope in Roman history without a lot of evidence attached to it. I think that it was to prevent the Romans from escaping. Boudicca's forces closed in, and when they were...
I'll say this, at least one thing that the Roman legions have is discipline. And as we've seen, numbers aren't everything in war, though if he did mention the actual number of this army, I apologize. But either way, I get the point. It's really overwhelming. Like, they saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's like the largest army we've ever seen. But it is an army that, you know, that's kind of like, just kind of relying on its overwhelming manpower to scare everyone. Well, they did actually defeat Roman soldiers before, but I'll say this, the Romans definitely, there's one advantage they usually always have, is that they have superior discipline and quality compared to their enemies usually. So I think the choke point is a really interesting point. Try to negate the enemy from utilizing its full force, and kind of like the Thermopylae idea, you know, like Darius had a huge army, but if you can get them in like a bottleneck or choke point, you can like wither them down. So I think that was probably the best option that the Romans could do to try to negate the, you know, numerical superiority there.
In range, the Romans let loose with their javelins. When they were out of javelins, the Roman infantry formed up into 3 wedge-like formations, and then, without warning, they charged at full speed into Boudicca's line.
What if you can create your own?
Paulinus anticipated that they would immediately be surrounded, which is exactly what happened, but the wedges allowed them to fight in several directions at once. Even though they were surrounded, they relentlessly moved forward, hacking through multitudes of Iceni. Boudicca's surrounding forces bombarded the Romans with arrows, javelins, and stones from all directions, but the Iceni were not used to fighting heavy infantry, and most of the missiles were light enough to bounce off Roman shields and armor. Boudicca ordered the few chariots.
Again, the quality of the Roman legion is in full display once again. Superior quality in armor and armament and better discipline. This is why the Romans rule the world. Like, you can see this, like, this impressive resistance.
It's at her disposal to charge into the Roman line several times, but the Romans would just tighten up, hold their ground, and continue pushing forward. After continuing like this all day, there was a break. The Iceni were frustrated and exhausted by the Romans' unstoppable machine-like momentum, and they tried to pull back. They started to run into their own wagons, which caused a bit of a traffic jam. Before long, a serious situation developed, where there was a huge crush of Iceni pushed up against the wagons, and they couldn't move. The Romans charged into this mass of humanity, and a battle that could have been a stalemate instantaneously turned into a slaughter.
My goodness.
The Romans didn't differentiate between man, woman, child, horse, pack animal. They killed everything that moved. Boudicca and some others would escape the slaughter, but she would take her own life by drinking poison a few days later.
Wow. Once again, like, I didn't expect well, no, I did expect the Romans to put up a great resistance for sure. But man, I thought the bottleneck, you know, around the trees was definitely gonna be where they would, like, hold off, maybe resist, but nah, that exceeded my expectations. They straight up pushed them back. Again, numerical superiority isn't ever... You know what? The amount of times I have said that on this channel, and the amount of battles that I've seen where an army has numerical superiority and still loses, I'm starting to think that numerical superiority isn't even an advantage anymore. Because I've seen numerically superior armies get decimated time and time and time again on this channel's history. So I'm starting to think it's not even an advantage anymore. I'm starting to think it's just numbers for the sake of numbers. And stuff like this kind of proves to that new way I'm starting to see it. But either way, yeah, obviously I did know that the Romans would at least find a way to keep ruling Britain because, well, you know, Britain remains a Roman province for a long time, many centuries. So, yeah, no way they were going to just lose Britain like that.
We're told that including the children and non-combatants, a little less than 80,000 of the Iceni were killed.
Wow.
The Romans claimed that only 400 were killed and another 400 wounded, but that seems really low considering the nature and duration of the fighting. In the immediate aftermath, the Romans would do an emergency transfer of 6,000 additional soldiers to Britain, so make of that what you will. And with that, the Roman colonization of Britain was pulled back from the brink. The Emperor Nero briefly thought about abandoning the entire island, but that idea died when he did. The Romans would occupy Britain for the next 300 years, but this was the largest conflict to ever occur on British soil.
So that was a really interesting video of another great video, once again showing a common Roman W, as they were known to have. And yeah, another great video, guys. I really enjoyed that.